Welcome to another edition of the Catholic View for Women. I'm Teresa Tomeo, where we explore views and news from a Catholic perspective, a truly Catholic perspective. Of course, as always, I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Janet Morana from Priests for Life and Silent No More and Defending Life right here on EWTN, and also Astrid Bennett Gutierrez, who is the head of Hispanics for Life. All right, ladies, we're going to take another look at that now famous press conference of the Holy Fathers.
That's right.
I think people would be surprised to know that there were a whole host of topics that he discussed during that famous press conference. We're talking about the one on the way home from World Youth Day, and this was in 2013. But many of the things that he said, or the media think he said, are still being spun and have taken on a life of their own. So that's why the viewers actually contacted us and asked us to dissect some of these statements. Now, we talked in the last 3 segments of this season's Catholic View about who am I to judge, and explained the teaching that the Church has to say about homosexuality, the treating of the people who are dealing with the same-sex attraction, and we had some very important testimony from 2 people who have struggled with this issue in their lives. Now we're going to look at another hot topic. However, this did not get as much play in the media.
It was discussed,
well, it was discussed a little bit, but the Pope, in his statement and talking about a woman's role in the Church, called for not a new theology of women, but a deeper theology. The Holy Father, if you really listen to what he is saying and go a little bit deeper, he's always taking us back to the Church teachings. Just like with the statement, and who am I to judge, he reflected on the Catechism.
That's right.
Of course, you wouldn't know that, according to the press reports, but this whole idea of a deeper theology of women.
Right.
For me, what I think he meant by that statement is, let's go back. Let's look at what the Church has to say in Mulieris Dignitatem from John Paul II, in the papal letter to women. And let's look at the roles of women and why women, what the Church teaches about why women cannot be ordained. It's actually a very beautiful teaching.
Yes,
it's not a no, it's a yes to who we are as women.
And maybe developed the idea of the feminine genius that, John Paul II developed, and he knew women's souls so well. So I think that this statement is a wonderful invitation for all of us, not only to explore it, but also to make it accessible to others. I mean, to people that maybe have never read the letter to women from John Paul II. Make it more accessible, make it more relatable.
Well, I have here, Teresa, from that press conference, what the Pope actually said when he discussed women. And here's what the Holy Father said. A church without women is like the College of Apostles without Mary. The role of women in the church is not simply that of maternity, being mothers, but much greater. It is precisely to be the icon of the Virgin, of Our Lady, what helps make the church grow. But think about it. Our Lady is more important than the apostles. She is more important. The church is feminine. She is church. She is bride. She is mother. But women in the church must not only, I don't know how to say this in Italian, he said, which is kind of funny, but the role of women in the church must not be limited to being mothers, workers, or a limited role. No, it is something else. But the popes, and he refers now back to Pope Paul VI, were beautifully of women. But I believe that we have much more to do in making explicit this role and charism of women. We can't imagine a church without women, but women active in the church with the distinctive role that they play. And then, of course, Astrid, he goes on
to say a beautiful example here. I think of an example which has nothing to do with the church, but is an historical example. In Latin America, Paraguay, for me, the women of Paraguay are the most glorious women in Latin America. Are you Paraguayo? After the war, there were 8 women for every man. And these women made a rather difficult decision, the decision to bear children in order to save their country, their culture, their faith, and their language. In the church, this is how we should think of women, taking risky decisions, yet as women. This needs to be better explained. I believe that we have not yet come up with a profound theology of womanhood in the church. All we say is, they can do this, they can do that. Now they are altar servers, now they do the readings, now they are in charge of Caritas, Catholic Charities. But there is more. We need to develop a profound theology of womanhood. That is what I think.
See? So he's saying
go deeper.
Right. He is saying go deeper.
Right. And in terms of, he also mentioned later on in the press conference, or maybe even in that statement, the fact that women cannot be priests. And he said John Paul II closed the door on that. And he was referring to one of the documents that we're going to have in our homework. And even before John Paul II's document on the male priesthood, which actually was considered the final statement on it, and the door was closed. There's another document which will also have, in terms of a link on our website, from Pope Paul VI. So you had two key documents, and John Paul II actually quoted Paul VI in talking about this teaching. So what the Pope is doing now is saying, let's go back. Let's look at this and let's understand it. And so in order for us to do that and go deeper, as the Pope is asking us to do, we've brought up one of the foremost experts on this topic of theology and women, our friend Dr. Monica Miller, who's a PhD, a pro-life activist, author, speaker, and theologian. And many years ago, she put out a great book called The Authority of Women in the Catholic Church. And Janet and I caught up with her in her home state of Michigan, where she talked about the Pope's statement on finding this deeper or more profound theology of women. Let's take a listen.
Okay, well, Pope Francis has asked for a deeper theology of women, and a flight that he took from World Youth Day, I think it was maybe the first time he even mentioned it, but he's mentioned it a few times even since then. And I feel very strongly that he is completely on the right track, and here's why. Even in my own book, I noted that there is this misunderstanding on the role of women in the church, where we can have a lot of platitudes about the dignity of women, their contributions to the life of faith, but what really is the theology? For example, in my book, I argue that women are the primary sign of the church in the world. Baptized women have, in other words, a sacramental dimension to what it means to be female. And they make what the church is, the mater ecclesia, the mother church, the bride of Christ, actual and real and concrete in history. But I don't think that that's sufficiently appreciated. I don't think we need to have a deeper reflection. Really, it should be almost innate now after 2,000 years of Catholic history and Catholic theology, and that really still isn't there yet. So that's really my primary argument. And the first line, as a matter of fact, of my book is a quotation from St. Edith Stein, who has given an enormous amount of thought to the subject of the place, the role, the spirituality, and the psychology of women in the Christian faith. And I'm going to make sure I get this right, because she said, women are called to be, in their innermost and deepest self, a sign of the church. That's completely right. So the sacramental dimension of what it means to be feminine, what it means to be female, as our Holy Father has called for that deeper theology, well, that is exactly what I hope to do as a theologian, and move this question further down the road so that we can kind of get off the confusion that in order for women to have authority, and in order for women to have their place, in order for women to be recognized and have dignity in the church, they have to be ordained. That the only kind of authority that really matters in Catholicism is public, obvious office, the office holder, and that is such a mistake. Authority is a much deeper and much more profound reality than simply whether or not a person holds a particular public, how shall I put it, ordained role, and that's the only thing that counts. It's sort of like the same problem, that we experience in the secular world with women and authority. What do I mean by that? In the secular world, what do women think is important? They think what's important is to be the head of a company and to come home and have a paycheck, to bring that paycheck home. And that is where their worth, that's where they put their worth, that's where they see their worth. And that is, again, in some ways it's kind of just competing on male terms. Trying to beat the guys at their own game. And as soon as we have the office, we hold office and we get that paycheck, then we're equal, see? And I think that what we really have to understand is we're dealing with spirituality and a sacramental dimension of what it means to be either male or female. And that's the thing, that female sacramental dimension of being the sign, the sacramental sign of the Mater Ecclesia in the church and in the world is the thing I really truly feel strongly has to be cultivated. I really believe that for example, let's go back to the garden in Genesis chapter 3. I don't think it's just was just a matter of convenience for the serpent to tempt the woman. I believe that he intentionally went after her as opposed to going after Adam initially. Why? Because the woman is really the center of human communion. With her is the marriage comes from the creation of Eve. The family comes from the creation of Eve. Life comes from the creation of Eve. So the center of human communion is based on the creation of the woman. It is not good for the man to be alone. So that she is the end of human isolation. She is the end of human alienation. So when Satan attacks her, and if he can get her to turn from the truth about God, truly, this was the shortest point from A to B. Okay, if you can get her to turn, the whole thing literally collapses, and then leading to the denial of the life-giving dimension of what it means to be female. In the Holocaust of abortion. In my book, I do a commentary on the book of Revelation, chapter 12, where you have the woman with the 12 stars and the moon under her feet and so on, and she gives birth to the child who will rule the world with an iron rod, which of course is our Lord. But there's a phrase in chapter 12 that says, "He made war upon the woman." He made war upon the woman. And so that's really the center of the whole thing. If Satan can destroy what it means to be female, and that the woman is the center that holds humanity together, that's the thing that we have to, I think, emphasize, to help women realize why that's so important for them to be the life giver, and that they are the center of marriage. Wait, look at marriage. Marriage is called matrimony. This is a female project, fellas. Right? When a man gets married, he's entering into matrimony. In other words, he's entering into the female's world. The world in which the marriage comes from, the family comes from, children comes from, and ultimately all of society depends on her life-giving ability. And should she forfeit that, the world really falls apart. The center cannot hold. It's disintegrated. So if the Pope's asking for a deeper understanding and a deeper theology, it's there. We have to start thinking about it. We have to start promoting it, and help people to think in terms of these categories and in terms of these ideas, and learn how to defend them.
Amen, Monica. If we could only get a deeper understanding of that, a deeper theology, but understand that where we are attacked because of how important we are in the entire scheme of things. We're going to look at that in addition to some other things that Monica said when we come back on this edition of The Catholic View for Women. Monica's book, Authority of Women in the Catholic Church, we'll have a link on our website to that. And also a reminder, we're talking about the Pope and a deeper theology of women. We'll be right back on The Catholic View for Women. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this edition of The Catholic View for Women, where we're looking at a deeper theology of women. A quote from Pope Francis on his way home from World Youth Day from a now very famous press conference. Of course, joining me, Janet Marana and Astra Bennett Gutierrez, my co-hosts on The Catholic View. I don't know where to begin because I just loved what she said. She said so many things, and even though she's a brilliant theologian, she was able really to get down to the heart of it. If we could just get beyond these statements out there that keep swirling in the secular world, that power has to do with the male priesthood, when the real power comes from our life-giving ability, and the world has convinced us otherwise.
That's right.
It drives me nuts. Drives me nuts.
That we're a sign of the church. That was very powerful, yes.
And the Mater Ecclesia, I love that. Absolutely love that. The other thing I think is important is to understand that what she was saying about women seeing, or the world seeing, this idea of authority coming from the priesthood. The priesthood is servanthood. Right? It's not about being in power or authority. It's about serving. It's about laying your life down, and they are marrying the church. But the other thing that people don't realize is all the different roles that women serve. And we did an earlier segment, I think it was last season or maybe 2 seasons ago, about all the women that actually work in the church. And they do have a lot of authority in the church.
I mean, I know some of the women that are in top positions in the dicasteries in the Vatican.
Right.
You know, and we interviewed them, several of them, on our previous seasons. And, you know, when they say the church is oppressing women, well, there's some women who are undersecretaries in some dicasteries. That's like right under the cardinal is a woman.
Well, let's look at the statistics, because I know you wrote about this in your book, but I also have a chapter in my book, Extreme Makeover. It's chapter 6, and it's Our Biggest Fan, Our Greatest Liberator, Jesus' Church and the Dignity of Women. Listen to some of these stats that I discovered in researching for this book, Extreme Makeover. 1/4 of the diocesan positions at the highest levels, such as Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer, are held by women. The number of women in leadership positions in Catholic dioceses is comparable to that of women in the U.S. workforce as a whole. Women in the church, such as Mother Teresa, Catherine of Siena, Teresa of Avila, touched hearts, changed lives, and in some cases even overshadowed popes. Major areas of Catholic influence in the U.S. are in the educational health systems, where women have taken the lead from the start. And that is in addition to everything that Monica said about why the devil is attacking us through abortion, through contraception, through sexual promiscuity, and convincing us that real freedom means to be all over the place doing anything we want with everybody.
And it's a non-issue, pretty much, what you just said. It's more about also being careful not to evaluate our role with what the world says, those power structures of the world. There's a beautiful letter on the Priest for Life website of Alice von Hildebrand. She's a female philosopher.
Right, she's great.
And she writes basically the following. It's very beautiful, a letter to a young woman. She says, "Let us take off our secular eyeglasses, and then we will be able to see that women, far from being discriminated against, are in many ways privileged. And this is the secret I wish to share with you." She writes to the young woman, "The body of every little girl born into this world is mysteriously sealed by what is properly called the veil of virginity. That is to say, a secret is entrusted to her body, and a secret is always veiled. According to church teaching, this veil closes the entrance to a mysterious garden which belongs to God in a special way, and for this reason cannot be entered into except with the express permission, the permission that God grants spouses in the sacrament of matrimony. Any little girl aware of this mystery will feel that her body is to be modestly clothed so that its secret will be hidden from lewd looks. Moreover, when a wife conceives a few hours after her husband has embraced her, God creates the child's soul in her body. As you certainly know, neither husband or wife can produce the human soul. God alone can create it. In other words, there is a personal contact between God and the woman, which, once again, gives to the female body a note of sacredness. Don't forget that he whom the whole universe cannot contain was hidden in the womb of the Holy Virgin for 9 months. Once you realize this, you will be awe-filled for the double mystery that God has confided to you, to conceive a human being made to God's image and likeness, and to give birth to it in pain and anguish. Do not forget that it was also in pain and anguish that Christ reopened for us the gates of paradise, which had been shut by sin. To women has been granted the awesome privilege of nobly suffering so that a new human being made to God's image and likeness might come into the world. Meditate upon this for a moment, and you will feel a deep reverence for your body.
Wow.
It belongs to God, and it is not a plaything that you can dispose of as you please. Thank God that He has made you to be born a woman. I am sure now that you understand that it is a great privilege.
Wow.
And you know, Dr. Alice von Hildebrand, you know, she wrote that a number of years ago, almost a decade and a half ago. But I remember speaking to her at a conference one time, and she said, you know, Janet, I wish every woman considering marriage would get to read my letter. And she said also for young girls, you know, would get to read this letter. Because then, you know, for the young girls, chastity would become a logical step. You know, she said, by this letter. And she said, for women entering matrimony, they will see what a gift they are, and so on.
But how many times do you hear this in your work in the pro-life movement about, where she mentioned this gift, and Monica talking about it so beautifully in our interview with Monica, where she's saying the power that we have because of the way we were created. If you think about the role of Mary, how did Jesus come into the world? I mean, God is God. He could have, you know, just come down as a king or whomever, wherever, but He chose a woman. What kind of a statement does that make? make about the importance of who we are and the power and the beauty that he gave us, power in a theological sense, not in a worldly sense, the ability to give life, to procreate.
Yes.
And what does the world say? You deal with this every single
the world
day.
says it's a burden, it's a shame, and it breaks my heart when I talk to women. I've been counseling women for 15 years, talking to them about abortion, how harmful it is, and that abortion takes the life of a child. And it's sad to see when they tell me that they're being told by physicians, by friends, that it's shameful to be pregnant. It's a burden.
Disease.
Yes, you're going to be unhappy. When we know that the reality is that a child is a blessing and that it's a great privilege to co-create with God. This is so, there's nothing, I think, more glorious than that.
In this society, children are treated as a commodity. You know, you can either have them or not have them. And of course, there's this new thing out about couples saying when they get married, well, we're not going to have children altogether.
Well, the Pope has spoken about that when he
yeah.
talked to married couples recently. He said that you need to really stop just looking at your marriage as something, you know, to conveniently go here, go there, and just have all the quote-unquote physical pleasures of life.
That's right.
Yeah, to be open to life and what that
to
does.
serve.
Yeah.
And you know, with the ordination of women question, I get so sick of that keep coming up
Yeah.
ad nauseum. And I always point to when Jesus walked this earth, and I know we've said this before on these programs, but it's worth repeating, he picked 12 men. Now, he had plenty of women. He was countercultural, actually, in the way he treated women in biblical
Right,
times.
because they were very involved
he
in his
spoke
ministry,
to women.
right.
He spoke to the Samaritan women, which were so against the cultural times. Women to him were very, very important. I mean, the Blessed Mother asked him to perform the very first miracle at a wedding, and it was his mother asking him, can you help me out here with the wine situation? I mean, he put women in the highest regard, and when he rose from the dead at the resurrection, he didn't go run into Peter first. It was the women he appeared to first. So that says to me, the Lord says there's a special role for women in the church. No, it's not for ordination as priests, because I've set that aside for a specific reason. You know, and I think of the priests is that they are there to be spiritual fathers.
Well, but they're marrying the church, and it's a servanthood. It's not a power thing. They lay down their life, and I know more about that role because now I'm married to an ordained deacon.
Exactly.
And the brilliance of the church, and again, priestly celibacy is not dogma. The Pope has also addressed this. That door is still open. It's a practice. That can change. Discipline can change. But the brilliance of the church in having the priest basically marry the church because of the commitment that it involves.
Well,
but getting back to what you were saying, I just want to read a quote from Mulieris Dignitatem, and I know this is a document we talk about all the time on the dignity and vocation of women. Getting back to your points, Janet, on the scripture. Now, if the church was so oppressive to women,
Right.
why in the world would Jesus have been so involved with women, and why were women so significant in his ministry? But listen to this. This is John Paul II. The women are the first at the tomb. They are the first to find it empty. They are the first to hear, he is not here. He has risen, as he said. They are the first to embrace his feet. They are also the first to be called to announce this truth to the apostles. Does that sound like a church or a God who's oppressive to women?
They're not. Absolutely not.
But in going back to what you said about the priesthood, I get tired of it too, but I have come to understand in my own reversion, and I never had a problem with the male priesthood. That wasn't one of my issues, and trust me, I had many. But I think it's important for us to go deeper, as the Pope is talking about, and as Monica is talking about, because what she said, that the devil attacking us is the easiest way from point A to point B, that's it in a nutshell. This is why we have contraception, sexual promiscuity, abortion, because the devil knew if he could get to the woman, as Monica said, boom, it all collapses.
Society, family, everything.
Everything, right. And so we are, in the church's eyes, in God's eyes, in the Lord's eyes, so much more important than the world says that the church says that we are.
Right. And, you know, as really the secular culture dictates, women have to be always like go-getters, you know, have the career, you know, have it all, have the family, like do it all.
Bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan.
Exactly.
Right.
And, you know, in my book, Recall Abortion, in chapter 5, I delved into this a little bit deeper, and to show how delaying having children and contracepting and doing all this stuff and having the career and trying to do it all.
You can't.
It's failing marriages, it's creating them people trying to go down the IVF road, which we know is a horror. And even when you look at the stay-at-home moms, you know, just those women who are able to, not everyone can, but those who can have their family and stay at home. Do you realize all the things that a stay-at-home mom does? Now, this is not coming from Janice.
Okay, we've got about a minute and 30 left.
Okay.
So you need
Financial investment website, Mint.com, says that doing all that stuff is worth $100,000 a year. So, wow, it's,
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's
Yeah.
a lot.
All right, homework.
Homework time, homework time. The documents, just to get it all square. First, read John Paul II's document on male priesthood, Ordinatio Sacerdotalis. Also, item number 2, read Pope Francis's The Joy of the Gospel, which is another beautiful document. And finally, number 3, Monica referred to this. Read the document by Pope Paul VI, Inter Insignores, which again closes the door to women
Right,
ordination
right.
once and for all.
Those 2 documents, Pope Paul VI, and then Pope
Right.
John Paul II. Now St. John Paul II.
Right. And of
those
course,
2 back to back.
Teresa, your book, Extreme Makeover,
And your book,
my book, Recall Abortion,
yeah.
those are available
And
at the
Monica's
Religious
book,
Catalog.
Authority in the Church on the Part of
Exactly.
Women.
Lots of homework.
Well, we can talk about this forever because this is all near and dear to our hearts, and it had a lot to do with our reversion to the church and studying these teachings. But go deeper, as the Pope says. Go deeper, read these documents, go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com. And we'll see you next time on The Catholic View. Thanks for watching.